Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara. We're excited to have you with us this week as we get to dive into Westland politics this week. So, we're bringing on John Haddad today. He's running for Westland City Council.
And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. We're excited to learn more about John. Um, I think he's still trying to log back on. So John is joining us virtually. Um, and like we said, he is running for city council in the city of almost said Taylor in
Westland.
Westland. Oh, there's John. Hi, John. How are you?
Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? So sorry about the connectivity issues, but glad I can be here with you today. I'm very excited.
Yeah, of course. We got to expand that broadband. That's something we oftentimes talk about on this show because
Exactly.
so many electeds themselves have issues connecting in, and they're like,
hmm
it's even our houses. So thank you for joining us, and we're really excited to learn more about you, more about Westland today, and how people can support you in GeoTV weekend. So
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for connecting with us and joining us today. So typically we just like to start off with learning more about you. So if you can please introduce yourself and tell us uh, what you're running for exactly and what else you'd like the
hmm
people to know.
Yeah, so my name is John Haddad. I am 26 years old. I live in Westland, Michigan, and I'm running for one of the four at large city council seats. I've lived here since I started college, so I've been here for a few years now. I really love it. I love all of the family restaurants and the small businesses here. That's a huge selling point for me. And the part of Westland where I live is very walkable. I have a lot of parks near me. The library, City Hall is near me. But actually, one of the reasons why I'm running is to make sure that we have great parks, good resources, great walkability in all parts of our city, not just where I live, more near City Hall.
awesome, yeah. So you said you've been in Westland for a little while. What did you study in college?
Yeah, I studied political science and history at the University of Michigan Dearborn. Yep. And then I also took some classes in Arab American studies as well.
Awesome. Great.
That's
So
really cool.
I'm sure that poli sci degree must be coming in pretty handy right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Yep. The political science degree and all of the experiences that I had while studying was very helpful. I met a lot of great people and got a lot of great information that really is helping me out in my run this year.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's really cool. So what made you? So what was your first start in politics or the first involvement? What was it?
Yeah, that's actually a really great transition because when I was working in banking, I was working to actually pay for some of my tuition. And I saw that young people like me were having a hard time because we were hampered down by student loans and low wages. But I also noticed a lot of our older customers or clients, they were having a hard time getting by too. They were living social security check to social security check. A lot of them were like, I have to work until I can afford insurance. I have to work for this much longer, even after I'm retirement age, because I can't really afford to pay all of my bills and get groceries. I remember there was one old woman who told me that her son helps her buy groceries. Well, what about the person who doesn't actually have that access to family members who can help them? That didn't make any sense to me, and I knew I wanted to get involved. Politics was also always something that I loved, but I was actually studying political science because I wanted to go to law school. But there were flyers for internships around campus. So I went to the social science department office and I actually talked to the professor who runs the poli sci internships. And after talking to me, I actually got an internship with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell's office, and that was my like actual start in politics. I helped get nominating petitions when I was there, as well as just like day to day constituent stuff when I was in that office. But I really loved it. She kind of opened my eyes to politicians really can care about their constituents, and there are really good politicians out there that take care of the people in their district and really do want what's best for them. And I knew that if I ever ran for office and when I ran for office, that I was going to emulate that we actually should take care of our constituents, our people, make sure all of our neighbors are taken care of.
That's really good. Yeah, it's a really great story of getting involved. So, so what made you choose like this cycle and the city council race at this time?
Yeah. So I wanted to run for an office that I was familiar with. I actually have a lot of experience with municipal governments. Another opportunity that I had while studying at U of M Dearborn was to work at City Height, sorry, the city of Dearborn Heights. Um, and I actually had a lot of experience working in the comptroller's office and the clerk's office. While I was there, I helped recruit people to work in polling locations. I helped verify business licenses with the ordinance department. I audited, well, helped prepare for the city audit and actually audited the employee pension plans for union and non-union employees to make sure that they were being compensated correctly in their retirement packages. So I got to use both of my investment experience and my poli-sci experience together, and I think that really helped me. And I knew that I wanted to get involved, and then I wanted to start off helping my constituents in the place where I live. So it kind of all made sense to me. It's a city council position. I can help my neighborhood, help the people that live around me, and I can put my actual experience to good use.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that story.
I'd say you sound pretty prepared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you talked that there was 4 at-large
Mhm.
seats for the city council race. So how was the city council in Taylor divided up?
Do you have like a ward,
Ward
system or?
Yeah, so I like that. Very much in sync. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, in Westland, there aren't any wards or precincts or anything like that. There are 7 seats in total, and every 2 years there's an election. The first 3 seats get 4 years, and the fourth seat gets 2 years. So that's how it's split up. And every 2 years there's an election, but there aren't any wards or precincts or anything like that.
Okay.
So do you like the at-large system, or would you like to see Westland move to a ward or district system?
That's something that I have done a lot of thinking about. I think that both systems actually have a lot of advantages and disadvantages going for them. So it's really weighing what's best for the voters and what not just what I think, but what they think as well would be best for them. A ward system would be really interesting because that way you could actually ensure every part of the city gets adequate representation and that neighborhood or that district actually does have someone from that area speaking for them. And I think that's one aspect of it that's a really big selling point for me, at least.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been looking at, because Dearborn also doesn't have a ward system. We just have like
Mhm.
7 um members, and I kind of like the idea of having like 3 at large and then 4 different wards with somebody representing, and then this way they can kind of be like elected different years instead of like the potential of having
Mm.
everybody all at once. Because like right now we are getting some, like for Dearborn, we are getting some city council who are rerunning, but potentially there could be 7 new council members. I mean, I don't think it'll happen, but that's the risk that we kind of go into with the system we have.
And the ward system, so in Ypsilanti, where I'm from, we have 3 wards and they're split down into precincts. And it's a lot more manageable to do like legislative doors where you can go out and you can talk to that ward and build really close relationships with your ward. It's a little bit harder to do the entire city for a city council person because, city council people
Mhm.
don't usually have a huge war chest to get like legislative lit and these types of things. So having the ward system, I think, now not that everyone uses it to their advantage, but I do think it would provide a little bit easier way for city council people to stay connected with their specific district within the city.
Yeah, and then I feel like when you have all the city council members just at at large, that no matter how hard they try, there's always going to be some parts of the city that they miss or do not pay as much
Right.
attention to when it does need that attention. And having the ward system will help a lot with that. And then you'd still have like the at large members to basically do things that relate to the whole city or help with those specific wards that might need that extra help from the at large.
Yeah. And this is a discussion that we've had with Taylor candidates, with Dearborn
Mhm.
candidates, now with a Westland City candidate. So it's just something we've been interested in this cycle, and it's very interesting to me how different all the separate communities in Michigan really are. So
Right.
so far it seems like everyone kind of likes the hybrid model the best. That's been the feedback I feel like we've gotten from most candidates and sitting electeds right now. So it's a cool thing to discuss, and like that's something with as new blood comes onto city council, we may see that discussion happening and some changes happening within the city.
Yeah, or in Dearborn, if we if we vote yes to change the city charter, that could be the discussion that we come up with that. So that's
Yeah.
exciting. I mean, I'm hoping people vote yes on the city charter and we can get some changes passed in the city.
So speaking of Westland and changes passing in the city, what would you say
Mhm.
are the top 3 issues that you feel are the most prevalent to the city of Westland and its constituents? And then how do you plan on resolving those issues?
Or making people more aware so they can be in touch with those things.
Yeah, definitely. So the top three things that I've heard from people having discussions with the public, out on doors, people commenting on our posts and things like that, things that I've actually seen the community discuss are equitable funding for roads and sidewalks. When I was knocking doors in one neighborhood, we're not even talking about the entire city. Let's just talk about this one neighborhood. One side of the street had a sidewalk that only went halfway up the road, and the other side of the street didn't. In that same neighborhood, one street wasn't paved and the other ones were. To me, that doesn't really make sense that we have that kind of disparity in our roads and sidewalks, and it doesn't really make sense to a lot of our residents as well. I'll make sure that our city road projects, because a lot of the funding and which roads comes from the county and things like that, but to make sure that we're actually focusing on our neighborhoods and making sure that we at least get mobility issues resolved, like better sidewalks for our residents who have low mobility, and even for our residents who just want to enjoy a walk on the sidewalk instead of walking down an actual neighborhood road. Another thing that people really want is something to do. I support our libraries, our parks, and I actually am in support of a future recreation center in Westland. I really want that to happen. I have had a couple public discussions on Facebook with residents of Westland of what they want to see. It sounds like there's a lot of um, excitement about it, but a lot of concern. So, what I would do on city council is make sure that we do have a recreation center available for people to have some fun. But I want to make sure that we do all of the research available on the cost and the construction and our location for it as well. There's one location, the Marshall Elementary School, that I think would be really great for it. It has a lot of classrooms. There's one full size gym in there, one half size gym that they use for indoor pickleball. There can even be a small satellite library, which is something that I'm really excited for, which goes back to the whole accessibility thing. We have the library near me on Central City between Ford and Warren, but if we have this other one on Cherry Hill, basically between Wayne Road, um, we can have, sorry, other way, on Wayne between Cherry Hill and Halfendale. Sorry about that, but I think it would be really great to have that small library there, the meeting rooms that could be available. So that's something that I would support. And the last issue is lower water bills. I would support cost sharing efforts or even a water storage facility. So that way we can purchase water in bulk when it's at its cheapest and lower rates for our residents.
Oh, that's really cool. And you guys are watching Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
So I think those issues are they're hyper local. Like they really are hyper local, everyday impacting you issues. And this
Mhm.
is why I find city council so interesting to me because like it does impact you every single day. The issues
Yep.
you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And you really got to find people who really are passionate about those issues in the community to step forward and work on them. Um,
Yeah, and talking about the sidewalks, a lot of that is a safety thing too. I'm
Yep.
thinking about sending door knockers out and not having like safe sidewalks. You always have to tell them, be really cautious, be really careful. But like at the same
Mhm.
time, like I hate so I'm a field director by trade, so I hate the idea of sending them out into like walking through roads where they may be
Right.
busy. So like, that's definitely a safety issue. I feel like, and I'm not sure in Westland what the transportation situation is, but I know in Ypsilanti we have about 20 to 25% of our population that actually walk and bike everywhere. So we're a pretty big like
Mhm.
pedestrian community. So I'm sure that you must feel similar issues there with people just having to get back and forth.
Yeah, Definitely. The city administration is currently looking at putting in bike lanes and things like that, which I think is great. We should have bike lanes, but we should also address the issue of neighborhoods without sidewalks as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's also in the same. We need to make sure that we have these bike lanes that pedestrians and people on their bikes can actually go down streets and have this safe area for them to do that. But we also need to make sure that neighborhood roads and sidewalks are actually being put into place as well. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and not just to have sidewalks, to maintain, make sure that the sidewalks are maintained and that they're
Mhm.
level, because I know there's like areas where because even in Dearborn it's not as much, but there's areas where like the sidewalk is off level, so if you're not careful, that's a hazard
Well, think
risk.
about walking in
Yeah.
Pontiac the other week when we were
Oh,
walking. I tripped so many times.
yeah, that's yeah, Pontiac also has that issue where it's like it's not only the streets that have potholes, it's the
The
sidewalks.
sidewalks have potholes.
But then again, we are in pothole state, so what can we do about that?
Most definitely. So, as far as jurisdiction goes, the neighborhoods, those are city roads. Then you're actually able to go into them, or are some of them county roads?
Yeah, that is one of the things that I brought up before is making sure that the city projects are actually making sure that we are taking care of those roads, and because, like you mentioned, there are county roads and city roads, so we have to make sure that the things that we can take care of and address that we are, as well as making sure that they're spread out through all of the individual neighborhoods and not just concentrated in one specific location.
Definitely, yeah. A lot of times I see in communities where you have like a central area that seems really connected and really good, and the moment you get
Mhm.
outside of that central area, it's like the rest of that community kind of is just disconnected. Maybe not even feeling like they're part of the same city. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
which once again is where having wards or just different sections
Right.
for city council would help with a lot of those issues.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's got to be difficult for you to know all the neighborhoods and know where all those projects are. So obviously, it's a team effort between you and the others on city council.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's quite a project to undertake, and definitely something I feel is a top priority for people. Um, and then the second issue, I actually was able to read some of your Facebook this morning and last night, and I was reading about your tour of the facility, and that sounded
Yeah.
really promising to me, like very exciting. And I know for a lot of people, having something for their kids to do that's safe is a huge priority right now. And so, like, how do you see that project expanding? Is that something that city council will be able to decide upon, or is that something you'd be supporting, like the mayor's decision on? How would that look?
Yeah, so they've opened up the facility for tours to the public because obviously the current administration is interested in turning it into a rec center. Um, when I am elected by my friends, family, and neighbors here in Westland, if the facility, like if the project hasn't moved forward and the cost of it, the public support, and the timeline for it all makes sense, I would be in favor of turning it into a recreation center. I definitely think it has a lot of potential. I would even be open to looking into things like adding a pool to it, so even expanding the facility. And I think that it has a lot of great potential, not just for neighborhood kids and teens, but even for adults and seniors. There could be like book clubs, not just for kids, but for adults as well. The meeting rooms aren't just for teens to hang out after school, it could be for people to actually do business. I mean, I use public libraries when I'm a political organizer in my day job as well. So when we were all in person, I used to use public libraries for meeting spaces to hold phone banks because they actually had those rooms that were kind of away from the library and that you could actually talk in them and things like that. So they're really great community spaces for us to use. And I think that in elementary school, that might potentially be torn down is kind of a waste when we have the extra rooms, the art facilities, an actual library and a gym already built in. I think you're just looking at costs of renovating it and costs of putting in a pool if that's what residents want. But I've heard a lot of residents want that, and I'm all in favor of a community pool as well. So that's why I had mentioned earlier we should do as much research as possible, like a cost analysis potentially, to compare it even to what it would cost for a new building. We did that with City Hall before they built the new City Hall and found that it would actually be cheaper to buy an old building and renovate it. So I definitely think we should. I believe in getting as much information as possible. So
Right.
looking into it as much as possible, uh, exploring the cost of it and actually going forward with it.
Yeah, and another thing that's really good about, keeping the libraries is not just for the books and people being able to go there and then having a rec center, is that so much of what we do these days is reliant on having a good internet connection,
Mhm.
and so many people cannot afford that, and um, in their homes, and having like the libraries and the rec centers is a good way for them to be able to be connected, and make sure they have that connection, that something that the city provides, because we really can't get away from the internet. Everything,
Yeah.
studying, everything getting is all internet these days, but it's still not an affordable cost for everybody.
No, and
Yep.
COVID showed us that there were tons of kids that just did not have internet at home. And they could not do their online schoolwork, or maybe their broadband wasn't strong enough. And then the libraries being closed like they were, that's
Yep.
usually where the kids would go. So I think, like, obviously we understand why they couldn't go to the libraries during COVID, but I think that it
Mhm.
showed us this need that has always been there, but maybe it wasn't as in our face. And now it's very
I
in
agree.
our face.
Yeah, and the fact that so many things that take up time can actually be done online, but at the same time, if you do not have the access to online, then you can't do it in a much easier way, or a way that reaches a lot more people.
Yeah. So I think like having that satellite location of the library in a different area of the town sounds like a fantastic idea for like expanding resources and accessibility for the community.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's really going to help out a lot of people. When I was actually at the tour of the facility, I ran into the library director, and she had expressed really great excitement for it as well. Um, One thing that you had mentioned that I really agree with is COVID kind of put these issues into our face that were already there, but may not really have been that noticeable. So even when the libraries are open and actually have the internet access, if it's too far, and a family doesn't have reliable transportation, or they only have one form of transportation, and a parent or a guardian or someone has to work two jobs maybe, or has to work any job really, they don't really have that access to reliable transportation to get somewhere. So when we have that satellite library and bring it closer to people, there is actually that accessibility to it. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, Michigan is a big state, and a lot of things are
Mhm.
distant from the people, and it's not just the cost that's not. I mean, like the cost of insurance is a big barrier for a lot of people
Yep.
to be able to get cars, and be drivers, even if they can. But then there's also a lot of people with medical conditions that can't drive, and that's where you become reliant on a lot of uh, having things more accessible to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is the
Yeah.
public transportation situation in Westland? Do you have buses or anything like that for public transportation?
Yeah, so there is. I would really like to see us kind of expand on that. They are working on. I actually have to look into whether they got this already in motion or if it's already been passed, but covered bus stops as well for people. I think that's really important. Yeah, but I want to expand public transportation in general. That's just my personal opinion. I would really love us, not just buses and things like that, but train systems. I know that's not a city issue, but I think that when public officials voice these issues and voice concerns with these and voice support for public transportation, more and more people talk about it and more things get done. I think public transportation in Michigan, um, it's building and building, but we keep needing to build towards a more equitable public transport system, and I think that that's an infrastructure issue in the entire nation. I mean, we do have trains across the entire nation, but I mean, when you're looking at France and Japan competing at who has the world's fastest train, and we're still using trains like from the previous century. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, like I said, is it for so many people, a lot of things become inaccessible, or hard to get to. I mean, that's something that I really feel heavily as somebody who doesn't have. I will get it by my birthday, who doesn't have their license yet, and now that I'm allowed to get my license because of the epilepsy. So it just takes away a lot of like things that you're able to do, and you become reliant, and your time becomes reliant on what other people or the times that you can with other people. I mean, I'm grateful for everybody that's helped, but it still is tough being in a state that has so little transportation.
And this is an issue that I think every community that we've talked to during this election cycle has brought up transportation. Whether it's expanding it or creating it, it's a continuous issue that we hear about. And what I'm really excited about is hopefully getting to a point where we're going to have inter-county transportation, so that you can. There's a lot of my friends that are like up in the corner of their county and they can't get down to where the jobs are, or they're on the opposite side of where the job is, and they have to take 2 or 3 buses to get to it. So I'm really excited to hopefully see us get to some inter-county transportation. And I think you're really, what you said about like voicing your support for it is so important, because if the local leaders are saying, yes, we want this, it's more likely that the state electeds and that the county electeds will take up that battle. Yeah. And so I think it's really, really crucial that we continue this conversation and we continue putting pressure on it. And I think, part of this is the culture of Michigan is, we put the world on wheels. So like Michigan was set up to be a car state. We were not set up to be an easy public transportation state. And we're really feeling the effects of that now. And it's a big battle to take on, but it's definitely an important battle to be taking on.
And I think it's going to take years for us to be able to resolve this issue. And by then, Japan will basically have flying trains or something. We're never going to be at them.
We'll never catch up.
We're never going to catch up. But yeah, I think this is like a really important issue that, once again, I think like people losing jobs during COVID and not being able to afford like the cars that they used to have or anything like that also highlighted what an important need for good public transportation system is.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think it also highlights a need for something else that's really important that I'm very passionate about, which is the fight for 15 and higher wages in general. Yes. I mean, we need certain issues to be resolved, and we know how to actually do it. When we have these higher wages available to people, more people are actually able to take care of themselves. So that's a really positive thing. But another issue tied to that is affordable housing as well. I mean, we need to make sure that the utilities, no, that's the wrong word, that the things that people use every day and need every day, like transportation, like their home, just these basic human needs are actually affordable to them and accessible to them. I definitely support the fight for 15. That's something that I would want to implement in our city administration, as well as when I talk to unions during endorsement interviews, I told them as well that I would actually ask businesses that are applying, like, what is your stance on unions? What is your starting wages? I want to make sure that businesses that come to our city are viable and that they can pay a living wage to our residents. That's my promise to our residents, to make sure that you can actually find a good paying job in our city, as well as have the recreation places for you to go and have a good time, and in the stores and things like that. I definitely agree. There's a lot of things that we need to focus on, including healthcare for all. Again, that's not a city issue, but it goes back to the whole, we need to start voicing our support for these things. We need to make sure that human beings are taken care of as much as possible, and repurposing our budgets, whether it's a city budget, a national budget, a state budget, to actually reflect the diversity and the needs of our people.
Yeah, and I was going to bring up the healthcare issue, that's another thing that we need. I mean, once again, COVID showed that so many people with, the loss of their job, they lost their insurance, that made them lose their ability to maybe get checked out in time for COVID. Or the fear of like, okay, if I go to the hospital, like maybe I should just sit it out at home because I'm not going to be able to afford that. And that's not something that we should think about. I mean, I know you've thought about that in regards to healthcare. I've thought about that in regards to healthcare. It's like, well
I lost my healthcare during the pandemic because I turned 26.
Yeah, there's that. And
my dad was terrified because he's like, what if something happens to you? We have to get you on state stuff right now. And like, that whole process to me was just so confusing. I had never done insurance before, but like there was that real fear of like, what if something happens, or what if you do catch COVID and like you don't have insurance? Like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I know like several people have posted is like they knew they had serious cases and they should be in the hospital, but it was like, okay, but if I end up in the hospital and this is what it's going to cost, then
Mhm.
what's going to happen with my family? What's going to happen like down the line? And that shouldn't always be our fear when thinking about our health. But unfortunately, in America these days, that's a lot of people's fear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And something on like the city level that I saw people doing was, the pop-up clinics, and a lot of those were in locations that don't have good access to healthcare in general. So something that I would love to see is like finding a way within city budgets to make some of those pop-up clinics more permanent, or at least on a rolling basis, where the second and the fourth Saturday of every month we have a pop-up clinic on the south side or the east side of the city where we really need it. Um, so you're right, you can't fix healthcare at city council, but you can take some small steps to increase healthcare access for
Hmm.
your people.
Yeah.
And we saw how hard it was to get to healthcare facilities during this pandemic as well, and that comes back down to transportation.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's that's always going to be a big issue, whether city, state, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, most
Definitely.
definitely. And then you mentioned stuff about water bill. Oh, sorry, Zahara. Go ahead and do
Yeah.
our mini break. Hold on.
And once again, you guys are watching Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Yeah.
Now
So
you can go.
yeah, now I can go. So the third issue you mentioned was talking about water prices, and you. I'm sorry. I'm not very good with budgets and numbers and things like that. So what exactly was the proposal to try to fix some of those issues for the residents?
Yeah. So one thing that can happen is that that different municipalities get together and they have an agreement where they're going to buy water in bulk, and then they'll actually repay their portion of what they use. That way, it's actually a cheaper cost for the city and therefore a cheaper cost for the residents. And another idea that I would be interested in researching and supporting is either like a water tower or a water storage facility that we can actually buy water in bulk when it's at its cheapest and store the water there and then disperse it to the residents. And that way, that lowers costs for them as well. Those are a couple ideas that I support. That's one of the largest complaints that people have is how much they're paying for their water bill. And I want to make sure that everyone, this goes with wages, this goes with affordable housing and affordable places to live. So this touches on like a lot of different issues that I'm really passionate about, is making sure that people can actually afford something as basic as water. I mean, everybody needs water. As far as I know, every living thing needs water. Maybe
Yeah.
there's some species out there that doesn't. Science is cool. It evolves every day. So who knows? As far as I know.
I mean, water is one of the basic human rights.
Yeah.
But it's made so inaccessible and expensive for so many.
Mhm.
So, when you talk about like expanding the water or making sure there's water, does like Taylor is it drinking water that's like is it safe to drink from the tap, and is that like something, or do people mostly buy drinking water
Or like
for
or
or
filters.
filters? Yeah.
Yeah, in Westland, the water is safe to drink. It's the delivery costs and things like that are really high for residents. I drink from the tap a lot. I boil my tea with it. It's perfectly safe, which we're very lucky because some communities are really unfortunate with that. And safe drinking water is definitely a necessity, and I'm glad that the city of Westland does provide that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once again, sometimes a city can have safe drinking water, but the infrastructure of the city is what makes it
Mhm.
unsafe, such as lead in the pipes or things like that, as we've seen in some places. It's
That
like,
was something we talked about with Pontiac, is they need to basically redo their water infrastructure because they do have lead in some of their pipes still, and we don't want to see something again like we saw in Flint, Michigan, which reminder, we started this show off talking about Flint, and they still don't have clean water. We don't want to see that continuing to happen. So
Yeah.
it's fortunate to hear that it's not an infrastructure rehaul, but it's more of a financial scenario. Then.
Yes, definitely. It's definitely really fortunate that it's not a safety issue or an
Yeah.
infrastructure issue. Definitely.
Yeah. And I love the idea of the water tower. I guess maybe I'm just spoiled because I live in Ypsi, Ann Arbor, where we have like the historic water tower. It,
Yep.
it kind of honestly didn't dawn on me that that's not like a norm for every community to have a
Mhm.
water tower. Again, I obviously just live in my bubble a little too much there. But like, I think that's a great idea is to have that sort of resource and to lower the costs in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's essential. Like we said, water is a human right, and it shouldn't be in any situation where people are trying to figure out how to keep their water on or have access to water. I think that's like one of the biggest shames we have in the state, especially being a state
definitely.
that holds close to 20%, or how much is it,
That's like 20%
of the world's fresh
surface
water. For us to have
Mhm.
so many people that go without, not even water for cleaning, just go without water for drinking is a real shame.
Yeah. And, again, with the COVID pandemic, we started telling everybody to wash their hands all the time. And there were
Mhm.
houses that didn't have running water on because they couldn't pay their water bills. So we saw pretty, I would say, instantaneously in our faces just how messed up that really was.
Yeah, and once again, a lot of the rec centers or places like that, like community centers, will help with people who do not have that. Once again, it shouldn't be that way, but for people who do not have
Mhm.
access to those things, continuously in their homes, have somewhat of an access to it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely an issue. It's a
I
hard one
agree.
to tackle.
Especially as a city council, since so many of these things are outside of what you're allowed to or can tackle on your own. So.
Or a lot of it is like you're going to have to partner with like the county exec or the county
Mhm.
commissioner, or partner with the state representative. So, it's you're the first line of defense for the people as a city council
Yep.
person. Like you're the closest on the ground. I mean, outside of maybe a precinct delegate, if you're lucky and have engaged precinct delegates. Um, but we don't really see the precinct delegates leading the push as much as we should. So really, it's city council, and like that's you're the one that can relay to your state rep and your state senators. This is what's happening in my community. This is what we need. And I think you saying that you're going to be vocal about these issues and still advocate for them, even when they're not necessarily in your purview, is really
Mhm.
important because that gives you a position to actually maybe partner with and make legislative change. And I think that that's really important for residents to see is that you're not super hyper focused. You're focused on everything that's impacting them, and you're going to be engaged on every issue. And that's at least what I'm getting from you. And I think that's really phenomenal.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think city council can play a big
thank
part
you.
in like this. Some residents might not know how to reach out, or they don't feel comfortable reaching out to like their state senator or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where having that connection with the city council and going to your city council will be like, okay, these are the issues that my constituents have been bringing. Let's work on them or see how we can address these.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of accessibility, what is your plan for being an accessible council member? I've seen
Yeah.
some people do coffee hours, some people do community cleanups. What's kind of your plan? What's going to be your thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I always give out my personal cell phone number. So 734-787-1523. Please reach out to me with anything that you have. If you just want to talk, if you have an issue in your neighborhood or you're part of the community, please reach out to me. I'm always accessible. 734-787-1523. That's just my phone number. But I love to be on doors. I love talking to people. My Facebook page is public. I do respond. I have people who volunteer and help me with like wording and things like that. And they'll always let me know when a post comes in. Obviously, I monitor it myself. So you can reach me on Facebook. You can reach me on my cell phone when it's safe to do. When it's safe if you're vaccinated right now, but with the variants coming out and things like that, excuse me, with things like that, when it's completely safe, I definitely want to have informal introduction sessions. One city councilman, I'm actually endorsed by Councilman Mike McDermott. He goes Facebook Live sometimes after the city council meetings, does a recap. I think that's really awesome. That's something that I would be interested in doing as well. Actually talking to our community, being as public as possible. Um, yeah, absolutely. And I know this is kind of a tangent, but since we were talking about infrastructure and water and things like that. Flooding has been a really big issue that's been impacting the community.
Yes.
And one thing that I want to focus on is green infrastructure that reduces flooding, like rain gardens to absorb extra water to keep them out of our storm drains in our main water systems, as well as turf gardens that reduce not only the water runoff, but in the summers they reduce heat islands as well. So in terms of, to fully answer your question though, to go back to the main question, in terms of accessibility, I'm always available. You can reach out to me from my phone, you can reach out to me on Facebook, and when elected by my friends, family, neighbors here, I will always be available to you and would love to have coffee hours and things like that as well.
Awesome.
Oh, that's really cool. Thanks.
So let's touch on that green infrastructure for a
Yes.
second. So Councilman Mike McDermott's a good friend, and I've actually been following his posts and his stories about the flooding. And yeah, Westland definitely got hit. I know he himself got hit. So
Yes.
I think that these aren't the last floods we're going to see, and we know we need to do something different. And I think that implementing some of the stuff you're talking about, we had Andrew Nowicki on one of our shows, the chair of the environmental caucus for the MDP, and that's exactly what he was talking about. Was that we've gotten rid of our swamplands, we've gotten rid of our natural gardens, we've gotten rid of what was naturally going to take care of the flooding, and now we have to go back in, and as us, we now need to kind of recreate that area that we destroyed. And Andrew was so adamant about it. He said, that really is a very good solution. It may not fix all the problems. Some of the stuff is, city drains and things like that, but it gives us a better solution than what we currently have. And not just that, it also beautifies the community.
And another issue I think is that, a lot of this stuff is happening because of how much we've neglected our environment in general. So that's why we're getting these what's supposed to be once a century storms are happening every month or something these days.
Yeah.
So
I saw a post from Denzel McCampbell running for Detroit City Clerk, and he said, this every 100 years or so is happening a lot more.
Yeah.
And
it's probably happening every 100 hours these days.
Every 100 hours. Yeah, it wasn't years, guys. It was hours.
Right.
Somebody got the translation wrong earlier.
No, but I think, green infrastructure is so important. And speaking about that, climate change, I know that that's like a massive issue, but that's something that city council can do in small ways too, starting maybe with your municipal buildings. Do you have plans for a green infrastructure plan for the city council? And then with that being said, does Westland have a climate action plan? I know some communities do. Does Westland have one?
Westland is very climate conscious. We have electronic vehicle charging stations. They actually have plans to build more. I really like that. My campaign manager is from the Guerrilla Politic. His name is Amani Johnson. He's a friend of mine, and he's a trustee for Southfield School Board. And one of the ideas that we had talked about together, it was actually something that he had for his campaign last year, was using our green infrastructure in schools and as well as municipal buildings. Now, the municipal building part is a little bit easier for me as city council. The schools, we would have to partner with different boards and things like that, which I'm very open to. I think we should have communication across different governmental boards, different oversight boards. As much communication as possible will lead to as much information as possible. And when the government has the best information and the best intentions, that's when the best results happen for our residents. So I definitely support not just investing in our public buildings, but also incentivizing homeowners to get green infrastructure in their homes as well, like solar panel roofs and things like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely. I know solar panels are starting to become a little bit more affordable for people, and they definitely are. There were some legislative bills that went through to help with tax refunds and things like that for solar panels. So it's definitely something I can see Michigan moving on. I'm from Ipsy, where we have Solar Ipsy, and something that we did is it's a nonprofit group that actually installed solar panels onto our library and our city hall. So that's how our local municipalities started becoming green, was through some nonprofit work. So I'm really excited to see that continue to expand for you guys, and that you already have a plan in place. Speaks a lot to the priorities of Westland as a city.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot more cities should look at that. I mean, even if you cannot getting it on homes, it's gonna take a while before people are able to afford it and becomes affordable. But let's work on changing, especially all the public buildings, to have that type of infrastructure, because that saves the city money as well as continuing to protect our environment.
Yeah. and then hopefully that'll allow the city budget to have a little more wiggle room in it for like the things that are really needed in the community.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should look at our city budgets in general and make sure that they reflect the priorities, the needs, and the diversity in our city right now and in the future as well. I mean, my campaign slogan is working for tomorrow today. That's something that I really believe in. If we take the steps today, we can have a brighter tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I agree
Absolutely.
entirely. For sure. You want to do our last break?
Yes. Once again, you guys are watching Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
You want to go ahead with the next question?
Yeah, so I mean, before we get to so our final question is, what are your parting words to the listeners? And along with that, how can people get involved with your campaign, and what is it that you are what is it that you need the most help with right now? Because we have just four days.
4 days?
Yeah,
3
3 or
days.
4
Yeah,
days.
the way I count it is 3 days. Yeah, I like to do the 2 minutes.
Okay, campaign season. If I don't have a calendar in front of me, I don't know time or date.
So we would love to hear just kind of your thoughts that you may have to share with other young candidates, people who are interested in running for office. Some of what your experience has been during this election cycle, and then definitely, like Zahara said, we want to know how people can get involved this weekend, how they can follow your race, and your words of advice to them, really.
Yeah, words of wisdom time.
Yeah. So I will split this up into 3 different parts to make it easier. I'll address the first part is advice to young candidates and people who do want to get involved in politics, and then I'll talk about some of the ways that people can get involved, and then I'll leave my parting words for what I hope will be for the residents of Westland and people who are interested in my campaign. I got a call from Run for Something. I had signed up on their website to get information about campaigning. And I got a call from Ethan Petzel, who was reaching out to potential candidates for Run for Something, and he got me really excited. And I felt like this made sense for me because I worked for City Hall. It was a different City Hall, but I actually had experience with a municipal government, and it was really close to home. I really could make the place where I live at a local level a lot better. So you really need that passion and that motivation. Really have the best intentions for the people that you're going to be representing. Reach out to some of your friends, people that you know that are organizers, people that are candidates, people that ran. After I got done with Run for Something, I asked Amani Johnson, "Do you know a union print shop so I can print out some literature when the time comes?" And he said, "Well, I actually work for an agency called the Guerrilla Politic, and they do photo shoots for candidates. They'll design your website. They'll help you print your literature from a union shop." And so for me, that made sense because it was a one-stop shop, and I really trusted Amani because we worked together on a previous campaign, and he got elected to the Southfield School Board. So I was like, okay, this makes sense as well. So try to get as much information as possible. I reached out to Mike McDermott after that as well because I worked for a presidential campaign, and he helped out that campaign and another one as well. So that's how him and I met. And I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about running for city council. You're on the city council right now. How did you win?" And he gave me the advice that I'm giving right now. Have the best intentions for the people. Really listen to them. Get out on doors. Other people might outraise you in terms of money, but they shouldn't be able to out knock you on doors. Really get out there and actually talk to people. The issues that I brought up today are issues that I've actually heard from residents. I like to tell people when I meet them on doors, I'm not running because I think I have the best ideas. I'm running because I think the best idea is listening to what you need. And so that's the best advice that I can give to candidates. Reach out to people, reach out to organizations that specialize in this type of thing. Reach out to your local Dems club. I mean, that's another great resource that people can look into, and have the best intentions possible for the people that you're going to be representing. Ways that people can get involved to kind of transition into the second part of that is you can go to johnforwestland.com, Jon for westland.com. And there's a sign up page as well as some information about me as well. There's a phone banking and a canvas, but like I just mentioned before, we really need help on doors. I have lit available. I'm going to be out on doors all weekend and through election day as well. I would love to have people come out and join me. And and we're kind of spread out throughout the city. We have different turfs all over. Like we kind of mentioned throughout here, it's about accessibility, about talking to people. So we really do make sure that we see every different part of the city as well. So that's definitely one thing that I would say. Plus, it's a good time. It's a lit drop, so it does go by quickly. But yeah, it's a great time. Plus, you get to meet me. I'm a lot of fun, I think. Um, um, and in terms of my parting words, and for my campaign and for the listeners, is I would say that I have a lot of experience with municipal governments. I worked in multiple different offices, and I'm not just saying that to kind of give you my resume. I'm saying that to let people know I know exactly what's going to happen, what's going on. I have experience with the budgets. I help prepare for budget and audit season with the comptroller's office. I've worked with the clerk's department before. When I ask people to come out and help greet people at the precinct locations, I'm doing it from a position of someone who used to train precinct poll workers. So when I say, hey, come out and help me with this, but please, you got to stay 100 feet away from the door. I always have the best intentions of the city, of my people in mind, making sure that everything's done the right way with you in mind and as accessible as possible. One way that I can focus on my campaign promises before I'm even elected is I've been telling people this whole time to vote for the public library millage request. It's a lower millage than the previous one. It's set to expire. So whether it passes or not, we still experience a lower tax rate based on that millage. But the library still gets the funding and can provide the services that it needs. I think that's really important. We've talked about having internet access. We've talked about having access to entertainment, a place to hang out, access to knowledge, obviously. But everyone knows that the library has books. But I just wanted to kind of highlight those other aspects of the library as a community space that we should make sure that we protect. I will always make sure that our parks are protected and maintained. I want to see more sensory friendly and wheelchair accessible parks so that every neighborhood kid doesn't get left out from their friends. And I want to make sure that we do what's best for all of our residents. So please, whether you're voting absentee or in person, have a plan to vote. Go to my Facebook at John Haddad for Westland City Council, JH for WCC. I made a post about all the different ways that you can vote, and I have some resources available on all of the candidates, not just me. I think people should be as informed as possible. Please do your research and vote for who you think is going to be best for the city. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Fantastic. So I heard we need to vote for the library millage and we need to vote for John. That's what I heard. Okay.
Yes.
And be informed. He also said
And be informed. And
be informed, please.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving that advice to candidates. I think, as a party, we're always telling people like, oh, you should run. But we need to make sure that we're helping people know how to run and who to talk to and where to go. So thank you so much for taking the time to give advice and for just caring about the future of the party and the future of this state and your city. I definitely can see your passion for it and your care, and I wish you all the luck going into this weekend.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm definitely down to come help knock doors for the general since
nice.
We have any more time before the
Yeah.
I'm definitely down to come help you out one of those days. Maybe we'll do we can go together and do something for sure.
Awesome. I would love that.
Yeah, we love knocking doors. So, well, like you said, there's information on John's website on his Facebook page about voting. Same day registration is still allowed. So even if you haven't registered yet, you can go register day of the election at your clerk's office. You can drop off your absentee ballots, or you can vote day of. Whatever you're going to do, just make a plan to vote. If you need help making a plan, I'm sure John does not mind if you reach out to him. And we'll make sure that you get your vote counted because every single vote matters, especially in local elections. Every single vote matters. So thank you so much for coming on today, John. We really appreciate it. I think we had a great conversation and we got to learn a lot about Westland from you.
Yeah, and then just once again, make sure to check out John's page. John had that for Westland City Council.
Yes.
Yep. So make sure you check out John's page. Go vote for John. And thank you guys for hanging out with us today for our discussion about John and Westland. We will see you next Saturday from 1 to 2.